Alright, if you haven't already, join the live stream. And you can do that by clicking on my name and then clicking on join stream. I have 9 spectators. Now I have 12 spectators. Does anyone want to count how many people are in this chat?
There's about 14 of us.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we have everyone. Someone just said, oh, nice.
I think brother.
Oh, okay. And that should be everyone. Yeah. Alright. Alright, so let's begin building your profile with technologies, projects, certifications, activities, and experience. So what we're actually going to be covering during this presentation is I want everyone to start thinking about their profile in a new light. I want people to start analyzing it, not so much as just, out there like, oh, it's time to make a resume. Let me just throw all of my achievements on a sheet of paper. Which, to be completely honest, that's what I did as well. So it's not like. And I'm sure many of you do that as well. You like, okay, let me put my education. You look at a sample resume, but I really want everyone to understand that your profile is more than just your resume, and you should have a list of all of your technologies, projects, certifications, activities, and experiences. And that's really what we're going to be doing during this workshop, is discussing how you can build these and what you can do to get more of these, and then how you can put these on a resume or a CV or an online profile to really try and sell yourself. So basically, when I talk about a profile, I'm not talking about a specific instance of a profile. I'm talking about the abstract space of all of your accomplishments and qualifications for a field. And in our case, this field is technology, right? So, I assume that's why you're here, is that you're a I mean, this applies to people in other fields as well. But in our field, technology, the profiles primarily consist of 5 components. And these components are not treated equally. In fact, many of them build on each other, and you'll see that in a moment. So while your profile is abstract, of course, you also have to take pains to bring your profile into reality, which is what I was hitting on before. You really have to you have to take pains to actually put the abstract space of all of your accomplishments and bring that into reality through resumes, CVs, and online profiles. So let's take a look at the hierarchy of profile components that we're going to be discussing. First off, we have experience. Experience is king. Experience, we're including jobs, internships, degrees, and formal education. Basically everything that you don't want to do, but you do it anyway. Certifications are going to be official distinctions obtained outside of formal education and normally from accredited third parties. However, you can theoretically invent any certification you want, but you really shouldn't because people will probably not take that as a valid certification. So then we have projects, of course, which are independent applications of technologies to create applications or achieve a goal. That should be pretty straightforward. Activities, which is membership in professional organizations. Welcome to an activity. You're here right now. And volunteer work involving technology. And finally, we have technologies, which are individual skills with a certain technologies. This can be a programming language, a library, an operating system, or a physical technical skill. Now, we are going to be going over all of these in more depth and getting a good list of these. And at the end, you're going to have a very nice abstract space of all of these to build profiles and resumes off of. Or enhance if you have one already. So, we're going to start off by discussing technologies. And technologies are really going to be the basis for all of the other fields. When you think about it, or all of the other profile components. When you think about it, technologies are the basis for experience. What do you do at work, school, etc.? You learn technologies. What do you do in activities? Why are you here right now? Well, you're probably in the IEEE to learn new technologies. And for projects, you're showing off your technologies, and certifications are just proof that you have a technology. So technologies are at the base of all of the other 5 profile components. So let's start by defining technologies first of all, which we did on the last slide, but let's go over it again. Technologies are skills that you've acquired through experience, activities, or independent practice. And as I just stated, technologies are really the bones of your profile. Everything is built on top of these technologies. So let's talk about examples of these technologies. We have programming languages, well-known programming libraries, APIs, frameworks. You also have software, IDEs, GitHub, Git, Adobe Cloud, basically just standard software. Normally, when people are looking for technologies, like especially in the business world, you're thinking in terms of software. As programmers and developers and electrical engineers, when we think of technologies, we're more thinking about hardware and programming languages and libraries. So we're talking, embedded systems, oscilloscope, cameras, phones, PCs, cool stuff like that. And then operating systems too. Everyone should have you should probably have a really good understanding of your operating system as a CES major. Just saying. So let's move on to which technologies you should actually put in your profile. So most of your technologies are acquired through experiences. You are forced to learn them to succeed. We're talking about things like, they force you to learn Java in CSI 201. Even if you don't want to learn Java, you have to learn Java to pass the class. Or just, Windows 10 by owning a Windows computer, or Mac if you own a Mac. But some of the time, and most of the time actually, you're going to want to acquire a technology by learning it independently. And this will make you a more well-rounded and appealing candidate for a certain area. And I mean, to be completely honest, a lot of stuff in, the real world, you cannot get by just by having the technologies that you are forced to learn in school. You have to branch out and learn your own technologies. So when deciding on what technologies to learn, a key is to decide on technologies based on what you think that you're going to be going into. A technology that you will use more in the future is going to be more worthwhile. For example, if you think that you want to be a AI engineer or a data engineer, you should probably be learning Python, MATLAB, whether or not they're teaching it in your courses. It's going to be a necessary skill later on, so you should take great pains now while you're in college to learn that before you go out into the real world and get smacked by it, right? So let's talk about how you should actually figure out what technology you should learn. So the first step is to analyze trends. So when deciding on a technology to learn, you're going to find that some technologies obviously are going to be, on the up and up. And the buzzwords everywhere. You probably hear it, React.js, and many other technologies like it. There's always a hot technology that everyone is on about learning. And if you can hop on these earlier on, you'll be able to meet what employers put on as X years of experience in Y requirements. You're going to see these everywhere when looking for jobs and internships. These are requirements that say you have to have this many years of experience in this technology. If you hop on that early enough, you will have that many years of experience in that technology by the time you're actually applying to jobs. So it's always better to start learning the popular technologies that you know you're going to see on your uh, whatever the job requirements are as soon as you possibly can. So did I hear someone speak out? No? Okay. So sometimes these technologies, they become greatly oversaturated by so many people who just want popular technologies on their profile. And you should keep this in mind too when learning a popular technology. And you cannot exclusively have just the technology. You should also have all of the other four profile components to back up your mastery of the technology. Now, I thought this was absolutely hilarious. I was looking at a React.js thing the other day, and it was a deploying a React app with Express as the backend. And I scroll down to the comments, and I see one man says, "I am interested in forming a team for React.js freelance projects. I'm looking for React developers." Look at this stream of comments saying that they're interested in helping out with React. This is how you know that a technology is extremely oversaturated by developers who want to use their ability learning a popular technology in a real life application. Oh no, it's small screen. How do I go full screen again? There we go. So let's take a look at trends. This is the Red Monk programming language rankings. from, I believe this was 2019, last year. So on the bottom axis you see the popularity rank on GitHub, which is how many repositories have that as their primary language. And then over here you see the popularity on Stack Overflow. So you get to see who's asking questions about it. So at the top, you can see all of the popular languages up here, and down by the bottom, you see stuff that you've never heard of. If you've programmed in MoonScript before, good for you. I've never heard of it. But you definitely want to keep this in mind when learning a technology. It's always better to be working in a technology that more people have heard of and will actually have popular applications. You could spend 2 years learning MoonScript, but it doesn't matter if nobody's ever going to hire you for it. But to contradict this, actually, my second point is going to be to find niches. While learning a popular technology is good in the short term, if you can find a good niche to work in, it will be good for the long term. So here's my 4 a.m. analogy I came up with. It's easier to get a job in the orchestra as a French horn player than as a trumpet player. Why? Because everyone is playing the trumpet, nobody is playing the French horn. It's just not as popular, but they still need one. So if you can become a master of a niche, you're going to be much more employable. And an example of this is just recently during the COVID pandemic, there was a massive shortage of programmers who knew COBOL, and they really needed COBOL developers. But nobody's used COBOL for like 40 years. So you had state governments being like, we will pay you $100,000 if you can just come try and fix our legacy COBOL code. So it's really important that you do try and work your way into these programming niches, or just, technology niches in general. This could apply to a software as well, or a hardware. People want people who know a niche extremely well. And just to show this off, in terms of which programming languages pay off, you may think that some of the more popular languages are going to be some of the languages that pay off the most and have the highest skill premiums. You actually find this isn't the case. You see that these niche languages like Scala, Go, Ruby, and Objective-C are actually some of the higher skill premium languages, which is rather surprising. If you want to read more about this, you can read this article here that I've linked. The slides will be available on the GitHub after the workshop. So, now we're going to have an activity. So, if you have any questions about technology, feel free to ask them now. And just take a few minutes to write down some of the technologies that you already know. Break them down into technologies that you were forced to learn versus technologies that you've learned in your free time. Just, of your own free will, out of interest. You should, I say this, take this with a grain of salt. Don't be sad if this doesn't apply to you, but you should have learned more in your free time than you've been forced to learn. If this isn't the case, it might be time to start learning some new technologies. So then finally, make a list of technologies that you've heard of and are planning on learning, and feel free to reach out, ask for resources. We're here to help you grow. So any questions about technologies? We'll probably be on this slide for about 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. Just make a list of all of the stuff.
Do you recommend a popular technology to learn that will pass down its knowledge to other popular technologies if you ever needed to switch? So I know that you really enjoy C++ a lot, and I know that learning C++ and pointers could really help out when it comes to switching to other easier languages like Python. Do you have any recommendations?
Absolutely. I'm what they call a language bigot. I love C++ more than anything. I will bully anyone who says there's a better language than C++. But in reality, if we're just talking about learning programming in general, I truly do believe that C++ is one of the best technologies to start with. Because when you learn C++, you basically you then have the ability to branch down into any other programming language. You can go from C++, think about Java. When you start out Java, right, the first thing you're met with is public static void main string args. So much of that, you will not understand what public means, you will not understand what static means, you will not understand what void means, you probably won't even know what the class wrapper around that means. You have to actually get further into the course before you learn any of that. Unlike with C++, day one, you get int main, and you just put your little code in there, and then you can branch into objects and object-oriented programming later on. So in terms of a programming language that's good to start with, I highly recommend starting it off with C or C++. That is definitely my recommendation. In terms of other technologies to learn, I would say that despite the fact that we're programmers, you should also have really good technical writing skill. If you haven't taken a look at things like LaTeX and whatnot, you should probably start, because a big part of being a programmer is commenting your code, which I know this is unpopular, and I despise writing comments, don't get me wrong, but you are going to want to comment your code, especially when working on projects in teams, and you're going to want to be good at technical writing, sectioning everything. Like, these are skills that not many people develop as a computer science major. I assume the electrical engineering majors probably have it a bit better, and the computer engineering majors, I assume you guys do a bit more technical writing. If anyone wants to comment on that, I have no idea what you guys are doing in the computer engineering program. But yeah, overall, that's my recommendation for technologies that would be pretty good to start out with.
What's
Any
your
other questions?
recommend? I do have a question.
Yes.
What do you recommend the process for learning a new language? Like, where to start?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. So the first place to start when learning a new language is always going to be tutorials. Read all of the tutorials. Good resources include what's the website? Think or Something Geek. I know there's a great website that has a bunch of tutorials. W3 Schools also has amazing tutorials. And actually, a lot of languages themselves have tutorials on the website where you download the compiler from. So that's always going to be the place that you want to start off. But once you know about 3 languages, you should be able to branch off into any other language from there. I would say. I don't think that's too much of a stretch to say. Once you have a good grasp on at least 3 programming languages, concepts like for loops, while loops, it's universal. It translates between almost every other language, unless you want to get into esoteric languages. But it's really universal, and from there you can branch off into almost any other language. So I would say definitely to get you started, you want to just look at tutorials, and then from the tutorials, I think you want to just know how to read documentation. As a programmer, knowing how to read documentation is probably the most important skill you can have. Knowing how to use Google and knowing how to read documentation, by far, most important technologies that you can have. Just don't put them on your resume because they don't look very impressive, but under the hood, those are the real kings of technology, I gotta say.
Are there any 3 or 4 or so in particular languages that you would recommend to learn to branch off from?
Oh boy, yeah. So in modern day, definitely start with C. I would recommend 100%. C, and then for a good scripting language, Python for sure. Python, very concise, and then JavaScript for any web applications you could be doing. And you know what? I hate to say it, but Java is still the king of cross-platform. I despise it, but it really is still used very widely for almost all cross-platform applications. All right, has everyone written down their lists? Anyone commenting in workshop text that they're done? You know what? I think, yeah, okay. So I'm going to move on. I hope you have a list of technologies and you've split them up because we are going to be using those at the end. Feel free to keep writing. So next, let's talk about projects. So this is where things start getting fun. So projects are the applications of the technologies that you've learned towards accomplishing a goal. Now projects, they can be as simple as a proof of concept, cementing a technology you already know, or an application where you learn new technologies as you go. Now projects are the #1 way to learn new technologies via hands-on application. Now, people don't understand this enough. I think that there's really a disconnect between, you can learn the language, you can read the documentation, but unless you really work on a project, I don't think you're going to fully appreciate the language and learn the structures as well as you could be. So projects, they also give you something to show people, right? You might know a technology like the back of your hand, But how are you going to prove that you know the technology? You might be the best C++ programmer in the world, but unless you have a project to show that you are an amazing C++ programmer, no one's ever going to actually know that you're an amazing C++ programmer. So you have to have these projects to show off to people, to prove your ability to people. Like when I go to ask for letters of recommendation, I'm going to be showing them my projects and saying, look, I'm an accomplished programmer, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. That's really what you want to be doing. And now also, projects don't have to be solo endeavors, I should point this out. Contributing to open source software is also a great way to do a project. Or, if you have a friend, you can also team up and do a project together. That's a great way to get even better experience, because in the real world, you're probably going to be collaborating on projects. It's very rare that as a programmer or an engineer, you're going to be soloing a project. So the more team experience you get earlier on, the better as well. So now I know this is where everybody struggles, is, oh, how do I come up with the project idea? And the first thing they think is, oh, I have to come up with a project idea and then I have to do the project. Now, I can't stress this enough. This is the complete wrong mindset to have when doing a project. You should think of something that you want and then go all in learning the new technologies along the way to reach your goal. You do not have to know everything you need to do what you want to do. You should learn the technologies as you go along. Now, I know there's still people who, even when I say this, well, so first off, a quick recommendation. If you ever have an idea and you're like, I want this application, this sounds like it would be really cool, but I don't know how to program this, it's okay. You should write it down, don't lose the idea, and then when you have free time, or you want to work on or you feel like you could work on a project, or maybe you practice coding for an hour every day, like you should be, by the way. You can use that time to try and implement your project. And trying to work on things that you have absolutely no idea what to do is a great way to get experience working on projects. You should be confused. You should not know what you are doing when you start working with a new technology. And you should be using your best technologies, Google and the documentation, to try and get a better grasp on technologies and then build your projects from there. So even with all of this, I know many of you still struggle, but to discover a project, or you're not inspired enough. Believe it or not, everyone has this problem, and I have linked 1,500 project ideas from beginner to advanced. And if you are ever struggling to come up with a project, read this list. I hope that one of these 1,500 project ideas will be something that catches your eye that you feel would be fun to implement. Now, this is another good one. Where to store your projects for maximum impact. So projects, it's great to do projects, right? But just like a technology, how you have to do a project to show off your technology, you want to show off your projects. You need a good way to store your projects so other people can see them. So this is where using a repository service like GitHub can help you show off your projects and provide people interested a way to work with you, and also show off statistics about how much you're working on it. And then also other services like YouTube are also great for cataloging projects. I don't know if any of you know Anson from 2 years ago. He was the TA for ICSI 201. He actually does a project a week and uploads a daily update to YouTube. And he's actually has like a cult following. He has like 20K subscribers now on YouTube just by showing off his projects and giving little tutorials about what he's doing. So there's a lot of great ways to show off your projects. I highly recommend using GitHub, and if you're really ambitious, using YouTube. And learning how to use GitHub and YouTube and show off your technologies, this adds yet another technology onto what you have, and it can just boost the how impressive a project is even more. All right, so we're on to our second activity now. We're going to be doing our project activity. So feel free to ask me any questions about projects, but take a moment to list down your projects. Write down what technologies each project has used. This is a big one, don't slack on this. If you've done a project, write down what language it used, what IDE you used to do it in, any libraries that your project used. If it's a hardware project, write down all of the hardware that you worked with. Yeah, so, and then after that, create a list of projects that you would like to do, anything you enjoy, and, just try and brainstorm what technologies you would need to get started and make it happen. And then finally, just consider how you're storing your projects, if you're showing them off adequately, do you have a platform for them or not, and if not, consider getting them. So I'm open for questions about projects while I'll give you guys like 3 minutes to write some stuff down.
Alright, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So going from like, yeah, do you have JavaScript experience, correct?
Yeah, I have a lot of JavaScript experience. It's my second most popular language.
Let's say for a sort of you link it to your friends and then that becomes like an instant chat room. How long from like, I guess, very, very like beginner JavaScript, how long do you think it would take to learn to get to somewhere we can make like a whole like, chat room website?
I did a chat room website. It was one of my first JavaScript projects, actually. It was, so when we're talking about a chat room website, though, so my chat room, it had a lot of PHP on the back end. So to do a chat room, so there's dynamic websites and static websites, right?
Yeah.
You have dynamic websites, which is you're sending content to the server after the web page has already been loaded. And then you have static websites where it just sends the page once and there's no interaction with the server after that. So let's talk about, so a chat room is an example of a dynamic site, and to do a dynamic site you have to have a backend that receives those requests.
Yep.
So I don't know if you know about this, but there's, well, I'm sure you probably do know about Node.js, which is a JavaScript backend for servers. So you're able to, with Node.js, what you're able to do is you're able to actually you would be able to receive those requests from the page and then send that to a database that stores all the messages and then, display that whenever someone logs onto the site and then forward them all of the messages and the message history. So it's not that hard of a project. I would say that the biggest blockades to doing it are knowing how to use the JavaScript fetch API, which just lets you send HTTP requests after the page has been loaded, which is how you would send messages and receive messages. And knowing how to use Node.js, I would say. That's really the only bottleneck, I would say. It's a mid-level project, I would say. It's nothing too big, but it would be a great way to, learn how to use a JavaScript backend, JavaScript front end, and the JavaScript fetch API.
So I see this one guy, he did it with like Socket.io and React.
Oh, Socket.io with React, yeah. So you can also be, if we're just talking bare bones, all you would need is Node.js, JavaScript, and HTML. But if you want to start getting fancy, React is for more of styling things, and Socket.io is another way. I would personally use Fetch, but you could also use Socket.io. That would also be a perfectly acceptable way of communicating between the server and the client.
So how do you decide when a project is good enough to include on your resume, and like what skills or knowledge do you try to show off in the project?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So personally, I am really bad with finishing projects. I always just almost all of my projects are just nice proofs of concept. I rarely make a project to the point where it's like, a product that could be sold off. Basically, at least my philosophy with it is you just want to show, programmers and other programmers like your technical prowess. So the point at which I say a project is ready is when you have enough basic functionality that you can show off the technology to its fullest extent. For example, I did a MIPS compiler, or assembler, and emulator, right? I did not style it at all. It looks like trash, but it works. It shows off that I know how to implement a MIPS assembler, even though it's just running in a terminal, and there's no nice interface to program it in. But you basically just want to show off the fact that you have mastered a technology. And you don't have to show off that you've mastered the entire technology, but I would say you really want to focus more on just implementing enough functionality so that someone would know. Like, if I say, oh yes, I've implemented a MIPS assembler in C++, the person already knows that I know how to, like, by default, you know, okay, if he's able to implement the MIPS assembler in C++, he must be pretty good at C++ to be able to do that. Like, you just want to make sure that you want, like, any good programmer, especially a programmer who would be hiring you or interviewing you, would know, like, the scope of a project just by you telling them what it is. So, yeah, that's, any other questions about that? Did I answer that adequately enough?
Yeah, that was nice. Thanks.
No problem. Alright, any other questions? Or we're going to move on to our next section. No? Okay. We're moving on to the next section. Certifications. Okay. So certifications are a very interesting topic, especially for college students, because normally you don't really see certifications for college programmers. They're more for, you know, people. Well, the common conception about certifications is that certifications are only for people who don't go to college. This is not true at all. Don't let this. Don't listen to that. There's definitely a lot of people who say that, but you should be. You should definitely keep your eyes open for certifications. So, of course, now you probably want to know what certifications are. So certifications are proof of your mastery of a technology. They're another way to prove that you've mastered a technology. But this time, instead of doing it through a project, it's going to be, you're basically going to take a test. And they're going to say, okay, and a third party, normally a prestigious company, will say, yes, we confirm that this person knows this technology. So it's proof of your mastery of the technology. It's offered by a third-party certifying service or company who develops the technology. So certifications is an industry, much like the GREs and SATs. It's going to be a test that costs money to take, and there's also going to be test prep courses and, you know, for all of that stuff. So long story short, certifications, they're marketed to people as a substitute for college degrees to prove ability in a field. It's especially prevalent in IT. Anyone who knows anything about IT, you probably know that it's just certification after certification after certification. So this is not, of course, this is not to say all certifications are useless to people getting degrees, and highly accredited certifications are still a great way to stand out in a sea of resumes. So essentially, let's talk about how you should, you know, research what certifications you should be getting. So since certifications normally cost money, you definitely want to make sure that the certification that you're getting is actually going to be worth it. You should make sure that your certification is widely accepted. Not all certifications. There's a lot of certifications out there that are not actually widely accepted, and you should definitely do research on what is and what isn't widely accepted within your area of technology. You do not want to end up paying like $10,000 for a certification only to learn that nobody takes your certification and the company that offered it was just trying to get money out of you. So in order to gauge how much weight a certification carries, normally a good gauge is the company that is issuing the certification. So we're talking Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Cisco. These should be on your radars as highly accredited certification companies that offer good certifications. So just to prove that we are going to look at the certifications that pay off. This is the average annual salary of someone with this certification. Someone who is a Google certified professional cloud architect has an annual salary average of $175,000 a year. So if you can get this certification, you are basically sitting pretty in terms of salary. And AWS, Amazon, I have no idea what CRIM is, Certified Information Security Manager, don't know who offers that. But you see down here, of course, the Microsoft certifications. So these are big certifications, and having these certifications, even just having one of these certifications, you're talking like $100K a year, six-figure salary. Like, certifications aren't a joke. Alright, so workshop activity. Questions about certifications. I personally do not have any certifications and probably won't be getting any, but if anybody has any questions about certifications in general, I'm willing to answer them. I don't know, I couldn't answer if you asked me what's a good certification to get. If you asked me that, I would just refer you to this list and say, get the AWS certifications, get the Microsoft certifications. But that's about the extent of my knowledge. So if you have any certifications, write them down and take a few minutes to, you know, just Google some certifications for your field of technology, And make sure to look at the following when Googling that. Who's offering it? Are they well regarded? How much is the test? Test prep materials. Look at some of the actual questions that the test is going to be asking. Like, whoops. Like, I'm sure the Google Certified Professional Cloud Architect certification test is going to be insanely difficult. So just take a look at some of the questions, see if it looks manageable, and check out, forums, core, Reddit, and blogs. Get a feel about people who have the certification, see how they're doing, and see if it, helped them. So I'll give you 2 minutes for this. Certifications, I hate to be that guy, but I personally don't think certifications are as important, but definitely keep an open mind. Any questions about certifications?
So, do you personally recommend that we do certifications, or should we just focus most of our time on just projects?
It's really going to depend on your career. I 100%. Yeah. So personally, I recommend as a college student, focus on projects. Prioritize projects over certification. Once you're actually in industry, maybe go for the certification. I would say that's a good time. Take a look at people in your company, see, does your company need a Google Certified Professional Cloud Architect? Does your company need an AWS Certified Solutions Architect? Or a Microsoft Azure? I mean, we're talking DevOps here, back-end management of project development. That's what certification is really going to be for, and that's really going to come into play once you've hit managerial level after you've spent 5 years as a programmer. So I would say maybe hold off on your certifications until then, but definitely having the certifications. There was a kid in my high school actually. He's the youngest ever AWS Solutions Architect certification ever, and he got into it was Dev Patel. And he got into MIT with that. So, yeah, certifications are no joke. Keep certifications in the back of your mind, and if you feel like your resume is lacking anything, a certification, even though it costs money, can be a great way to make up for stuff. If you did really well on your SATs or ACTs, and you're really good at cramming test prep material, consider certifications. Any other questions about certifications?
Do you mind if I chime in about the certifications?
Oh yeah, go for it, Tony.
Yeah, so on top of what James was saying, I'd say certifications are pretty important if you're doing a career change. A lot of people who weren't in the technology industry will do a certification if they're trying to get into the industry, just because it's a cheaper alternative than going back to school. Because you can 10,000 is still a lot of money, but
that was a complete guess. I just assumed that the ones that give you the highest pay grade are probably 10,000. That's a complete guess. Do not take my word for that.
I've heard 10,000 is in the ballpark, but it is just a cheaper than going back to school and paying 30,000 or 50,000 depending on where you go. And I would also agree with James that it's kind of keep it in the back of your mind, but I think definitely a impressive project would look better. But also it depends on your career, what career you're going into. A lot of the people in the CDO work on getting certifications. I think that's a bit more important for what they're doing, which is cybersecurity, but I think if you're doing software engineering or something, then probably just a impressive project would be better. But that's just my 2 cents.
Absolutely, 100%. It's really important in fields like cybersecurity. I agree. That's and DevOps and IT. That's where your certifications are going to be, key. All right, so now that we're done with certifications, let's move on to activities, the most fun section of this entire workshop. So activities, what we classify as activities. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things you can classify as activities, but when we define activities, we're talking about memberships or interactions with organizations and networks, with other technology professionals that help you build your experience and expand your knowledge base through workshops, QAs, talks, or just plain dialogue. Guess what? The IEEE is an activity. So activities, they're a great way to show off that you're more invested in technology than someone who's just in it for the money, and that you're actually someone willing to invest your free time into interacting and building the tech community by, building your skills as a professional and helping other people out. So activities, they become even more meaningful when you go from a learning role to a teaching role. These positions will give you leadership experience and management experience essential for anyone planning a career in tech, especially if you plan on moving up that ladder. You can be a programmer, you can be a bottom level programmer for your entire career. That's a great career path, that's fun. You get to always, program stuff. But if you actually plan on moving up, you are eventually going to be taking on a managerial role where you're going to be more in charge of directing and overseeing the projects and, looking at your lackey's code and being like, oh, you did a terrible job, and having to, tell them that without hurting their feelings. So doing activities where you can get that leadership experience early on is a great way to, prepare for later on if that's something you're planning on doing. So let's talk about how you can pick some worthwhile activities. You want to find a nice balance, okay? You want something that's prestigious, but you also want something that you actually get stuff out of participating in. So there's plenty of people in the IEEE International Organization who pay the $400 a year IEEE membership fee and never go to an IEEE event like their entire life. They're just in it to have it on their resume. They're just like, I want to pay my $400 a year and I just want to have the IEEE on my resume. And good for them. That's they're not getting anything out of it. So except the clout of having the IEEE on their resume. So on the other hand, you have people with hundreds of thousands of reputation on Stack Overflow, and they're never going to be recognized for that. They've probably reached millions of people and helped millions of programmers, and nobody's ever going to care about that. So you want something that has a nice balance, right? You want something that's prestigious, and also, gives you a lot of experience. Something right here. So, let's talk about activities for IEEE members. So, as IEEE members, as the IEEE, we strive to offer what we believe is the ideal activity for a university student to participate in. We offer you guys workshops and hands-on learning experience to boost your technologies. We have that prestigious IEEE name recognition, looks great on your resume. We provide leadership opportunities through the E-board and J-board positions, and we provide lots of project opportunities. We had 2 people work on the last project we proposed, so it's a great way to it's a great way to really build up your profile by participating in the IEEE. So, also, we are not the only tech-related club on campus. There's also the CDO, which is the cybersecurity club. If you're interested in any of that aspect, they also do a lot of technology-based stuff. Especially if you're interested in learning more about Windows and stuff, they do a lot of PowerShell hacking. They are really into that whole scene, which we don't really touch on as much. But if you actually want to go check them out, they have a lot of. It's good to get that balance and learn more about this operating system and not just the programming languages. Alright, so, it is a glorious and sad day. We are sad and proud to announce ourselves as the only on-campus activity for CEAS students. You may have heard of Base 64 or the ACMW. They're both dead. IEEE is the only remaining CEAS organization. Yeah, so we've basically dominated the entire school. Yeah, we are the best organization. Thank me later. Alright, so other activities. So, you don't just want the IEEE, as nice as the IEEE is, and as you'll later see on my resume, is the only activity that I have. But you also can engage on you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a club. There's more to activities than just joining a club, right? So you can, on top of club activities, there's also these low commitment activities. I say low commitment, but some of these are actually kind of high commitment activities. So you can become active on a technology forum or platform like Stack Overflow or the C++ forums. You can contribute to open source. This is a great way to boost your profile in multiple ways. With GitHub, it's literally never been easier to contribute to open source. You literally go on to your favorite open source project, you look at the issues, you get a good first issue, they'll tag it for people who want to get involved, and you can just try and, program a solution for an open source project. It's a great way to get involved with the programming community or the tech community. I say programming community, I know we have computer engineering people here, but, you can, as computer engineering people, you can also use, what's the language you guys use, VHDL or something? That lets you diagram circuits out in text. I don't really know it, but it sounds really cool, and that's also on GitHub. You can, program in that on GitHub. Very cool. So you can start a blog about your experience with technologies. This also gives you that good technical writing experience, and to share your experiences with others. Or as mentioned previously, you can start a YouTube channel with tutorials for technologies, and you never know, you might blow up. All right, so workshop activity. Any questions on activities? Take a moment to list down activities that you participate in. Take a few minutes to think about what activities you might want to participate in. Check out some open source projects. I imagine that all of you use an open source project. If you go to GitHub and look up an open source project, take a look at their issues tab, see if there's any marked good first issue, and you could literally start contributing to your favorite open source project tomorrow. Like it's pretty insane. So and think about leadership experience. Do you have any good leadership experience? And think about how you can get some leadership experience. Yeah. So, any questions about activities? I'll give you guys 3 to 4 minutes for doing. You know what? Guys probably don't have 3 minutes worth of activities to write down, but also be sure to check out some open source projects on GitHub. Any questions about activities? No one wants to ask me about how we've taken over the entire CES department?
Yeah, how did you manage that?
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone is just bad, except us.
What?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. All of the other clubs, the e-board, what you get is people who want to have that activity experience, and they want that leadership experience, but they don't actually want to do anything. They don't want to host workshops, they don't want to host meetings. So you have these clubs that it's the only members are the 4 e-board members, and then the club just dies because nobody comes to the meetings because they don't have any, and then there's no one to elect as the future e-board members, and that killed both Base 64 and ACMW, which is really sad because they used to be glorious clubs, and you would have had the opportunity to put those on your resume, and you no longer do because they both died.
The base one doesn't even show up anymore when you look for it.
It's sad. Base 64, back when I was a freshman, used to be the primary programming club on campus. If they hadn't died out, I probably would have been the president of Base 64 instead of the chair of IEEE. But now we're the programming club and the technical club as IEEE. So you know what? I mean, it's not all bad. IEEE is probably more prestigious on your resume than a programming club anyway. All right. Any other questions? We're going to move on otherwise. Final point. All right, we're moving on. Experience. So let's talk about experience. So experience is by far the most important thing on your profile. So when we talk about experience, we're defining experience as work. My bad. Excuse me. We're defining experience as work experience. Basically things that you're obligated to do rather than wanting to do on your own. So when we include it on this list of experiential things, we're talking tech jobs, formal tech education. So college counts as experience, internships, and training. So why experience is king and why it's the hardest to get. So experience is by far the #1 most important thing to have on your profile. You can have 100 technologies on your profile, but a company will still prioritize the person with 1 technology and 10 years of work experience over you with no work experience. You have to have experience if you want your profile to stand out and seem like it's professional at all. So, much like success breeds success, experience breeds experience. The more experience you have, the more likely you're going to get more experience, essentially. It really all comes down to just getting your foot in the door with no work experience that first time. And it can be challenging, and the best way to do it is by far with internships. And the way you get internships is why building up the rest of your profile is so important, because you want to stand out when trying to go for those internships or trying to get your foot in the door at a junior dev job if you don't have any internships. So let's talk about how to get experience. Previously stated, experience breeds experience. More experience you have, the easier it is to get more. So the best way to start, I just said this, internships and startups. So internships may also want some experience, but normally looking at the other profile components, they'll understand themselves as being stepping stones, and they'll be pretty lenient on how much experience you need. So high-tier internships are always going to want you to interview, and they are also going to require letters of recommendation. Activities and projects are a great way to prepare for interviews, and having a good relationship with professors and people who can write you letters of recommendations is also great. Like, go to office hours, maintain good relationships with your professors. You won't regret it later on. I didn't. I regret it. And now I need to get letters of recommendation from professors. So the more professors that you can, I know it's hard here at a university where the class size is so big, especially in those lower level classes where it's hard to develop that personal relationship with the professor. But if you go to office hours, it's better than nothing. All right, so and now a special message from Robin to international students. Robin says that international students must have experience. So basically, experience is especially important for international students since you're competing with naturalized citizens who have the same qualifications but are less of a hassle to deal with in terms of like paperwork, essentially. So the best way you can stand out, again, experience is king. The best way to stand out is with more experience. And Robin, do you have anything you want to say about this? I'm going to take that as, oh, thank you, Robin. Yeah, no, Robin is absolutely right. International students gotta have experience. All right, so workshop activity part 5. Questions on experience. Take a moment to list all the experience you have. This doesn't even have to be tech experience. This can just be any experience you have doing, any work whatsoever. And then take a few minutes to think about what experience you would like to get. This can be what future jobs you want, what you envision as your career path. Are there any internships that you're interested in? See if the internships you're interested in, look them up on Google, see if they would require letters of recommendation or an interview. Write down a few of them and consider applying sooner rather than later. Summer internships, fall is the time to start applying for summer internships. I started applying for freshman year. I applied for summer internships in the spring, and lo and behold, there were none left. Like you want to, the best summer internships always start in the fall. Always start applying for your internships in the fall. I can't stress this enough. Now is the time to start looking at internships. Not over winter, not in the spring. By the time spring rolls around, all the good ones are already going to be snapped up. Google, I know, does their stuff in the fall. I had a friend who actually got into Google recently for an internship, and he applies in October. So it's always start early, guys. It's you won't regret it. Any questions?
Have
So,
you done any internships yourself?
Unfortunately, no. I've been here for 2 years, and I got screwed over freshman year because I tried to apply in spring, and then COVID basically screwed my chances of getting an internship this summer. So I have worked with I do summer work with, well, okay, I technically, it's not really an internship, it's more of a job, but I do contract work for a web development company. Yeah. Any other questions about experience? I know there were people talking over each other, so I assume there's more.
So you're a freshman, so
Yeah.
I mean, skill level isn't exactly up to par.
And
So even if
companies
you
know this. Companies do not expect you to be going entry-level internships. Do not expect you to be going in as a JavaScript master. They know that this is like you trying to get experience. So you shouldn't worry too much about how much experience. But I mean, definitely you want to target your skill level. Like read over what the internship requirements are. They're not going to want. You're going to see that they're not normally super strict about what they're requiring, especially the entry level ones. There's a few where they require, they want you to be a junior or senior because they want you to have more experience and help out. Anything else? I know I kind of cut you off there. before you can finish your question.
That was pretty much it. At least my concern is, you apply, you show up, and then they hit you with something, and you're like, all right, I think I'm
Well,
gonna
see,
go.
that in itself is that's a good opportunity. When they tell you, I can't even tell you how many times they've been at work and the client has been like, hey, do you want to implement this obscure feature in PHP using a library that you don't know? And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll try it. And this is where you use your number one skill as a programmer, Google and the documentation. And you learn it, and you do it. Any other questions? I know there was, I think there's one or two more.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't have any projects, and I'm a junior already, so I'm like in really rough shape. What
Oh
would you
boy,
say to like
it's
someone
time.
like me?
It's time to start.
What would you say to someone like me who wants to try and get an internship for next summer? Do you think I should just wait till my senior semester and just
No,
spend this year?
don't. You should definitely try and go for the internships this summer. I would say best thing that you can do right now. I think you should try and work on a few projects, even if they're just like basic, like little comedy projects that you do. Like look at that list of 1,500 projects. I mean, even like the easy sections, prime number calculation, all of
Right.
those like little projects, like even those look better than nothing. You want something on your profile, and if you can make your profile. There's more ways to make your profile stand out than just your projects. You just want to make it. If you can just make it look like you have more than the bare minimum, you can still get an entry level internship, no question. As long as you apply early enough and send out enough, feelers, you should still be good.
Do you also have like a deadline? So like, would you say that anytime like after November, anytime after December is like too late, or
I would say so. Here's the thing. It's really variable. All of the top companies, we're talking like the tech giants, their internships you apply in like October or September. Like you should be looking like right now for intern. If you plan on trying to intern with a tech giant, IBM, any company that you actually know the name of off the top of your head, like if you want to work for them, look now what they're offering for next summer, and try and get your stuff together as soon as humanly possible. Other than that, I would say deadline, yeah, probably November deadline for tech giants. Smaller companies that no one's ever heard of, you can probably still apply in the spring. I would say that's a fair bet. Definitely not after spring break. After spring break, you're hopeless. There's no way you'll get a internship after spring break. I would say that's the hard cutoff line. So that's my 2 cents on that matter. Anyone who I know a lot of our e-board members have had internships. So would you guys like to talk about your experiences applying for internships?
Yeah, I can chime in.
Yeah, please do, Tim. Thank you.
So I would say start now and don't stop. Especially if you're gonna apply for a name brand company like IBM or Amazon or Facebook. So we're in a tough boat for that's a little bit of side tangent, but I'll get to that. So those companies have the luxury of picking from like thousands of applicants that have tons of experience, um, like already at a company. So there's a very high chance that that person is going to get picked for an interview, even if you have like a pretty solid resume, um, just because they have that experience. Also, we're a lesser known college or university, I mean. So those companies are going to expect better performance from like the name brand colleges like MIT or RPI or RIT. Probably partly because they don't have a lot of employees that came from University at Albany, so they can't really say like so what I'm trying to say is they could go with somebody from University at Albany and not really know how they're going to perform, or they could go with somebody from like RIT that they know is going to like do a good job. So that is going to make it especially difficult. But yeah, I would also don't like have an expectation. Like don't apply to like just 10 internships. Honestly, so like last year I applied for probably like 30 to 40 total, and I didn't get a single one. I actually only got one interview, but I didn't even get the job. Um, So it's good to have a backup. Fortunately, I was able to get a research position over the summer, but that was like very last minute. So make sure you have a backup, and if you go on like online message forums and stuff, like on Reddit, there's actually a good subreddit called r/CS career questions, and you can ask a bunch of people about questions that you have about internships and jobs. But there are like some crazy stories, like partly induced by the pandemic, where people have applied to like 500 different jobs and like are still looking. So literally just like keep sending out your resume. Like honestly, don't stop applying. But also make sure that you're kind of catering your resume or your application to the company, and just make sure that like you're hitting all of their like job specifications. And then my last piece of advice, if you don't have a lot of experience, I would also just like try to advertise the skills you have from like the classes you took. So if you took like algorithms and data structures, ICSI 403, like put that, like have a section at the top of your resume that's like skills. And so that's going to help you for some companies, because if they have like an automatic reader, it's going to see algorithms and data structures. So it's going to put you like up a little bit higher on the stack.
Yeah, we're going to be going into that in a second with resume construction with profile components in mind. So I'm glad we got a head start on that. Thank you, Tony. All right, so any other questions about experience?
Yeah, like I heard somebody saying a research position. So how well does that contribute to the experience?
Can you say that again? Cut out a little bit there.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, so like somebody had just mentioned a research position. So could somebody explain me how well does that contribute to the experience on resume?
Yeah, so I actually have a research position as well. I work with the U Albany DMM lab. So I would say a research position is great for, I would say, so it really depends on what you're planning on doing, right? So this is a big thing to think about. If you're going for grad school, only do research positions. Screw summer internships, not necessary. If you're planning on going for a company, you want to prioritize an internship over a research position. Yeah, again, if you're going for grad school, 100% research positions probably better than internships, because you want to also develop relationships with those professors to write your letters of recommendation for grad school, right? For those research positions. So I would say for sure, research positions can be helpful if you're planning on going for a company. In fact, the chair last year, Noor, she had a research position, and she now works at a company. Blackstone Group, actually, very impressive. But yeah, having a research position, it's great. I think it's definitely a good way. It's definitely better than doing nothing, right? And just staying home and over the summer not getting any experience. But I would say you wanna, if you're planning on going for industry, prioritize high-tier internships. And maybe you know what, maybe you would prioritize a research position over a low-tier internship as well. It really depends on what the research position is and what the internship is at that point, and you would have to just make that call. I would say tech giants always prioritize a tech giant internship over a research position, though. Okay.
Like you say a research position can contribute for my internship in the near future.
Can you say that again? Say it a bit slower.
Does a internship, does a research position do help for me get an internship in future?
Oh yeah, for sure. Any experience will always help you get an internship, I would say. But the more experience you have, the better. 100%, for sure. All right. Any other questions? Can we move on? We're going to the resume section next. No other questions? Okay. So let's talk about bringing your profile into reality. I hope you've been following along, writing down all of your stuff. So let's talk about bringing your profile into reality. So your profile is the abstract space of all of your accomplishments and achievements, but you bring it all into reality all the time through your resume, CVs, bios, and profile pages. So most resumes and profile pages already, consciously or unconsciously, already are using these 5 core profile components due to how obvious they seem, right? But understanding how to balance them and their importance hierarchy is key to effectively marketing yourself. So make sure that you stress experience and tailor presentation of your profile to suit the desires of individual employers, which is exactly what Tony said previously. This is 100% key when making a resume. So first, let's talk about resumes. So resumes are a one-page list of your biggest achievements of your profile, and they're normally presented when applying for job or internships. Resumes should be tailored. I said this already. They should be tailored. And over here, this is actually this is the do and avoid list that the college provides us as advice for making resumes. It's all pretty obvious. So tailor your resume to the position. Avoid making spelling mistakes. Avoid using passive verbs, and avoid underselling leadership experience. So, resumes continued. Always remember that resumes are short and sweet. Try not to go over one page. You normally don't want the person, spending. I think the statistic is that the average employer spends 30 seconds looking at a resume. They will not look at a second page. Anything on the second page, you can basically consider not right. You should really have it just be a one-page resume. So always attach it. So when you're applying for a position you really want, always attach a cover letter specifically written about the position you're applying for. This shows that you're not just sending out hundreds of your resumes willy-nilly, and that you actually care about the place that you want to work. And for sure, prioritize relevant experience. When you're using a resume and it's for a job or an internship, remember that experience is king. You want to put your experience right up front. That's always going to be your most important stuff. Technologies and projects should be on there. Activities, definitely, if there's room left, put them all on there. But experience is 100% king. So prioritize relevant experience. So this is going to be fun. We're going to analyze resumes and create little sample resumes. So let's check out some resumes and break them down into their 5 core profile components, see what they're doing well and what they could be doing better. So I'm actually taking the liberty to show off my resume. This is my resume that I actually used to apply for my research position, and I sent out for my web developer position as well. So first off, you can see right up top, I have education, right? So this is a experience. Look at this. Work experience. Right here, this entire area, largest area on the page, is experience. This is exactly what you want to see, right? You want a lot of experience front and center. And then I kind of mixed in here, I stick in some activities. I stick in IEEE branch chair right here, and I list out my experiences and duties just really quickly. You don't want to clutter them and make them not read what you have. So then down here I have work experience, and I just quickly put my lab experience and my full stack development experience. And then down here you can see I have my projects. See right here at the bottom. I don't put too many. I only put the 3 that I think are going to be most important when applying to something. So when I applied to the DMM lab with this resume, I just instead of having these projects on here, I actually put more data analysis focused projects on here, right? Because I was applying to a data analysis lab. So that was clearly the best choice. You want to be able to just swap in. You probably want like a list of like 10 to 20 projects, and you want to swap in what's best for the position that you're applying for. So then, same with key skills over here. I have my programming languages, my expertise, and then I have my technologies down here. So this entire area right here is all of my technologies, right? So I'm showing off my technologies front and center. And also note that I show off the technologies each project is using in the project section. I list the technologies under it and then relist them to just emphasize my mastery of that technology over on the technology section. And then finally, at the end here, you can see my activities and certificate. Well, I don't have any certifications, but if I did, they would be in this section right here. So, this is just activities, Albany Presidential Honor Society, Dean's List, all the standard stuff to put on your profile. So that was my profile, and now we have an anonymous e-board member's resume to analyze. So what my resume does well is it showcases experience first and foremost, right? So let's talk about how bad Moana Kagugi's profile is, right? So as you can see, he puts his education, they put their education first. But you can see that they follow up with their skills. They should be following up with their experience, because experience is king. Technologies are the building block, but you want your experience first. And as you can see, very similar: individual projects, project section, and then extracurricular activities, which is your activities section. So it's not as pretty as mine, obviously. However, it does do a good job of getting across all 5 of the points. Of course, there's no certifications here, but certifications not as important for us right now, so we don't want to focus on that. We want to focus on experience. And as you can see, if you look at the ratio, education and experience, largest ratio on the page. That's where most of the emphasis is placed, followed by the individual projects and the skills and the activities. That's good. So, use the lists that you've created in the first part of this workshop. I went to the next slide. So if you've been following along and you've actually been listing stuff out, like I said to, take the time to create a sample resume with the experience and all of your projects that you've had. Check, is it well balanced? Check out your ratio of experience to everything else. Are you showcasing your experience properly, your technologies, your projects? And if you want, you can post it in our helper channels, and we will analyze it with you. Do you have a resume already? Do you want me to try roasting your resume right now, live in front of 20 people? Share your resume with me and have that happen right now. Go for it.
That's wild.
I will roast your resume right now. Please hand it out. Go for it. I was kidding, by the way, about my resume being better than Tony's resume. Tony has a very nice resume.
It's Moana's resume. I don't know
Yeah,
what you're talking
Moana's
about.
resume. Yeah.
From Wisconsin.
Oh man. Alright, so I'll give you guys 5 minutes to put together a quick little sample resume. Feel free to, share it with us. Don't be afraid. It's not like my resume isn't actually that good. I don't know, it may have looked intimidating to you guys, but compared to some other people's resumes, it actually wasn't that impressive. You can do a lot better. My technologies section is kind of all over the place. You really need to try and cater your technologies to whoever you're applying to at the time. Mine is kind of just, the libraries that I know. I take it we have no takers for the live 20-person resume roast. Alright, well, I'll give you guys another few minutes.
I would love to, but I'm not interested in doxing myself.
Oh, that's a shame. You can be Moana 2.0. Change
Maybe.
that name, send it over.
Maybe I will.
So who just asked? So Matt, you just asked that? That was you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, already. I mean, is this a hypothetical, or are you talking about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, half and half, kind of.
Because I have genuinely helped people who have nothing to put on their resume before, right? There is, I'm friends with a person who is a high school dropout. He couldn't make it past 9th grade. I tried to help him with his resume. So essentially, whether you like it or not, you always have experience. The fact that you use a computer gives you a technology to put on there immediately. You can immediately put onto your resume, I work on, I use Windows 10. I'm proficient at Windows 10. There's basic stuff that you can put on there no matter what, right? And the fact that you have an education at all, the fact that the state forces you to go up until, 12th grade, or even if you drop out of high school, 8th grade, the fact that the state forces that on you, you already have an education to put on there, right? So while experience is king, entry-level positions do not require experience. There's always, you can still get experience even if you have no other stuff, right? So, essentially, when you're, just starting off your resume, you have no experience on there, right? You want to put on your education, you want to put on your technologies, which you have by default. And especially, things like Microsoft Excel, like stuff like that, companies eat that up. That's like 3 points for your resume. You can learn Microsoft Excel in like a day, 2 days. Like the entire Office suite, you could learn in a week, and you would immediately be more employable than like half of the entire country just by having that on your resume. Like people don't really seem to understand just how it's not hard to even if you have literally nothing, you can build your profile up like immediately. You can immediately do projects. All it takes is a few hours. Sacrifice some of that CS:GO time and hop on your resume build up grind. Especially, if you're a CES major, I say this, I don't actually practice this, but you should be programming for an hour a day, at least. I make up for it on weekends. I program 8 hours on weekends. I got the entire week's worth of programming done in one day. Yeah, so I'll deal with individual resumes that need help afterwards, but if anyone would like to show off their resume or discuss their little sample resumes right now, feel free. Any other questions? I'm going to take that as a no. Let's move on. So I don't know how many of you are applying to graduate school. Right now, I assume most of you are probably, not even thinking about that right now. Personally, as someone who's applying to graduate school, I would have liked to hear about these earlier on. So your CV, unlike a resume, is basically literally every single thing you've ever done, and it's like 12 pages worth of your profile. It's like every single technology you know, every single project you've ever made. Normally it's for like publications, right? You want to put your publications on there. Unfortunately, I don't have any publications yet, but I will, and it's going to be great. But yeah, basically CVs are like massive, right? Just think of them as like gigantic resumes. No company is going to ask for a CV. CVs are basically exclusively for academia, graduate school, and high-level positions, basically. A list of your it stands for the course of life. Basically everything that you've ever professionally accomplished, right? So you can thank us later. We're not going to have you write a CV. I know it's hard enough to write a resume. So we're not going to do any exercises with CVs. I'm just letting you know about them. If you're thinking about graduate school, just know that you're going to have to write a CV. I'm going to have to write my CV sometime within the next month. So I'm not looking forward to it, but it is what it is. So just keep this in the back of your mind if you're thinking about graduate school. Alright, so finally, let's talk about online profiles. Online profiles are a great way to bring your abstract profile into reality, right? So most developers, well not most, but like the good ones, have an online presence with their own profile website. And sometimes this features a blog. A lot of them feature blogs and lists of projects, right? And of course the profile itself is a project. This is especially prevalent among web developers, right? Because the web developers, what's the best way to prove that you're a good web developer? Well, it's to have an incredible website for yourself. The same way someone who owns the kitchen company wants to have the nicest kitchen around so they can show it off and show off, how good they are at making kitchens. So, everyone has an online presence. Well, so let's get out of the online website right now and just talk about your presence on social media platforms and forums in general. You should be taking advantage of your social media to advertise at least a few of your accomplishments and sell yourself. Because when a company runs a background check on you, they're going to find all of your social media, and you want to have on your social media all of the stuff that could help boost your resume. So, and of course, also, just throw it in your bio. It's not expensive. In fact, I will show you right now. Actually, I think I do this on the next slide. Yes, I do. Hilarious. Yeah, and also you can use platforms that for professional networking. We're talking LinkedIn, GitHub. Sell your profile even more. Just sell yourself. So let's take a look at some online profiles. We're going to start off with the GitHub, which is me. Oh, time to zoom in. Again, I strongly recommend getting a GitHub for your projects if you don't have one already. Let's take a look at my profile for a second. Take a look at how I'm using my profile components just in my extremely short bio. Look, I start off experience, activity, experience. I stack up experience and throw an activity in, and I list out all, and I have my best projects all collected right here, shown off at the top, right? That's exactly what you want to see. You want to show off your good projects, and you everywhere else you want to throw in experience, experience, experience. So let's take a look at a bad GitHub profile. I'm not going to hover over any of those, but those are default profile pictures I see. Default profile pictures are a great way to not get to have people think that you don't use the service very often. So I highly recommend any professional environment, change your profile picture from the default profile picture. It takes about 10 seconds, and it makes you look about 10 times more professional. Just say. Yeah, so make sure you use your profiles on, and you know what? That's not even the end of it. Let's take a look at my Twitter. Oh, there's Donald Trump's Twitter. Here's my Twitter.
Real Donald Trump?
Real Donald Trump. I always enjoy looking at what Donald Trump is tweeting. Yes. So, computer science and mathematics double major at UAlbany. As you can see here, experience, experience, activity, activity. Show off your activities, yes. And your, experience you can. Show off your experience first. And look, I linked to my GitHub. This is like the easiest thing you can possibly do. Throw a link to your GitHub. You're showing off all of your projects on your online profiles. I'm even showing off my profile on my anime list profile. Check this out. Look, it's a website for sharing anime. And even here, I give experience, and then I make a bunch of jokes about my anime taste.
No way.
Oh, of course I do. Yeah, and look, I linked my GitHub on my anime list profile. It's not
What if the
hard.
weeb is hiring?
By the way, Matt, I appreciate your profile picture. Overlord is one of my favorite shows.
Dude, it's so good.
It's one of the best shows. So, okay. Back to not my anime. Let's take a look at some profile websites. So this is what I was talking about earlier, right? Developers, and even, honestly, it's not hard. GitHub will literally give you a free static website. Take a look at some of these static websites. Okay, like this is, look at this. Do you see how fancy this is? It's beautiful. Like, okay, view my work. What does he have? Look at this. Okay, so we listed out all of his languages, profile pic. Look, experience, experience, experience. Oh man, that's really nice. And then all of his technologies right here. Portfolio, and look at that. Oh man, and he has a blog too. Blog, big win. You can publish like an article, like no effort article, like every 2 months, and it's like great way to build your profile up. I can scroll down. I'm probably not going to go into any of these, but look, people showing off experience and experience. Look at this. Full award-winning full-stack web developer. First thing I list is experience. I can't stress how key it is to put your experience everywhere. It's the best way to sell yourself. So take a minute to look over your bios and online profiles. Are you selling yourself as well as you could be? Think about other profiles you could create to boost your online presence. So any questions about online profiles? I'm happy to answer anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't have any online profiles.
That's also fine. That's 100% acceptable. All you want to make sure is that when they run when they try and figure out who you are, when the company runs the background check on you, and your Twitter comes up with you twerking on tables and playing beer pong, you at least want to have your experience in the top in your bio. So even though you aren't showing any promise in your posts, you may as well be showing promise in your bio. That's all I'm saying.
Another question. Would an anime profile picture make you more hireable?
I wonder that myself every single day. I sure hope it does. I really hope the employer doesn't see my Tomoko profile picture and think to themselves, this man is an anime profile picture, I'm not hiring you. That's going to be the saddest day of my life. I would say, I honestly would say no. The anime profile picture probably detracts like 100 points from anyone who would be trying to hire me. But you know what? It is what it is. If I ever actually start looking for a job for real, I will change my anime profile picture. And you should too. If you have an anime profile picture as your GitHub profile picture, and you want to come off as more professional, for sure. Don't have the anime profile picture. At least have it be something more socially acceptable, right?
Or pick
So-
a good anime.
What?
Or just pick a good anime.
Oh, that's quite the statement. We can stay afterwards and discuss that with me. Alright, so, I think I skipped this slide. No, I did not. Alright, we're finally at the end here. So, for the wrap-up, I will be taking all questions about literally anything we've discussed. Feel free to stick around, ask questions about your profile, get resume help one-on-one, chat with us. And next week, keep your eyes open for our Introduction to Development with Unity workshop, which Connor is going to be hosting. So,
Yes, sir.
Very exciting. I know many people think that Unity is only for game development. That's not actually true. Unity is an insanely powerful engine, and it's used for a ton of stuff, simulators and whatnot. So we're going to be introducing Unity by teaching a bit of game development. But by no means should you think that Unity, we're just having fun with it. It's a really valuable skill to have, to know how to use a good engine, I would say. So, any questions about anything in the workshop, feel free to ask now, and feel free to, stick around. Alright, if not, thanks for coming. Good work, everybody. Again, if you want to talk about things one-on-one, feel free to stick around. We'll be answering questions in workshop text and profile pictures. Profile pictures. Alright, thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.